Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it? Imagine this scenario, okay? You consider yourself a modern, seasoned traveler. You've got the latest flagship smartphone. Your digital boarding passes are, perfectly queued up in your wallet app.
Oh, yeah. The fully digital traveler.
Exactly. Your e-visas are downloaded, saved as pristine PDFs. You even have this crisp QR code ready for your luxury eco-lodge reservation. So you step off a plane, and the heavy equatorial heat just immediately hits you like a physical wall.
Right, it's intense.
Yeah, and you walk confidently up to the immigration counter to present this technological marvel of a phone. But the border official barely even glances at your glowing screen. Instead, they demand a crumpled, very specific piece of yellow cardboard.
And if you don't have it.
If you don't have it, your digital perfection means absolutely nothing. You are going to spend your hard-earned vacation in an airport holding cell. Welcome to São Tomé Príncipe.
It's the ultimate clash, isn't it? I mean, it perfectly illustrates that friction between the seamless digital lifestyle we've grown so accustomed to in the West and the deeply sovereign physical reality of a true travel frontier.
Totally. And that jarring contrast is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to our latest deep dive. So we have been poring over this incredibly detailed, no-holds-barred travel and logistics guide today.
It's essentially a masterclass in advanced scouting.
Right. For one of the most remote, least visited countries on the entire planet. Our mission for this deep dive is to extract every hard fact, every hidden mechanism, and the unfiltered reality to help you figure out if navigating this equatorial two-island nation is genuinely worth the immense effort and financial investment required. Okay, let's unpack this.
And we absolutely have to look past the marketing copy today. A lot of destinations claim to be untouched or off the beaten path.
Oh, everywhere claims that now.
Exactly. But when you examine the microeconomy and the physical infrastructure of São Tomé Príncipe, you quickly realize that untouched isn't just a glossy brochure buzzword here.
No, it's a strict logistical reality.
Right, with profound implications for anyone trying to navigate it. So we're going to be breaking down exactly why things work the way they do, from the fragile local supply chains to the staggering flight costs.
Okay, because right now someone listening is definitely spinning a mental globe trying to figure out exactly where we are talking about. Like, where is this place that can completely halt a modern traveler with a piece of yellow paper?
Well, if you're visualizing the west coast of Africa, look right into the crook of the continent down in the Gulf of Guinea. Sitting essentially dead on the equator, about 300 kilometers off the coast of Gabon, you'll find two isolated volcanic islands. So São Tomé is the larger island to the south, and Príncipe is the smaller, older island to the northeast.
And just to give you a sense of scale, the total population across both of these islands combined is just around 230,000 people.
It's tiny.
Yeah, it has one of the smallest gross domestic products in all of Africa. The language is Portuguese, owing to its colonial history, and the local currency is the dobra. But what is truly staggering to me, honestly, is the visitor count.
The 30,000 number.
Yes, fewer than 30,000 international visitors arrive in a year. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, a major international train station sees more foot traffic before lunch on a random Tuesday.
It's true.
Are we essentially looking at the last true off-the-grid paradise?
In many geographical and developmental respects, yeah, we are. But to understand why it remains so isolated, you really have to look at its history.
Right.
It was a Portuguese colony right up until 1975. And when independence was declared, there was this sudden and massive departure of the colonial administration and capital.
So everything just kind of stopped.
Exactly. The infrastructure essentially froze in time. The islands were left to rely almost entirely on small-scale agriculture.
Mostly cacao and coffee, right?
Yeah. Because they didn't have the massive mineral wealth or the oil reserves of some mainland African nations, they never experienced that explosive globalization-driven development boom in the late 20th century.
Which actually brings us to the massive late 2025 news that completely changes the trajectory of these islands. The entire country, and I mean the entire sovereign footprint, not just a park, was designated as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve.
It's unprecedented.
But let me pause you there, because we hear terms like UNESCO thrown around all the time in travel circles. What does a biosphere reserve actually mean mechanically for the country? I mean, does it just mean they put up some nice plaques, or are there actual laws involved?
Oh, it is intensely practical, and it goes far beyond putting up a plaque. A UNESCO Biosphere Reserve designation requires a country to implement strict zoning laws.
Okay.
So you have these core areas that are strictly protected ecosystems where almost zero human interference is allowed. Then you have buffer zones surrounding those where only deep-rooted traditional activities or highly monitored scientific research can take place.
Right, and then the rest.
Finally, there are transition zones where sustainable economic development is permitted.
So if I'm, say, a massive global hotel conglomerate, and I want to build a 500-room, all-inclusive, concrete resort with a huge buffet and a fleet of jet skis.
You can't. You absolutely can't. The environmental regulations tied to that UNESCO status simply forbid it. You would never get the permits.
Wow.
Because of this, the UNESCO designation has acted as a very specific kind of flare sent up to the global ecotourism industry. It's actively triggering a wave of development deals from specialized operators in Portugal, France, and Germany.
But they have to play by the rules.
Right. Because they're restricted by these zoning laws, they cannot rely on high-volume, low-margin mass tourism. They are forced to pivot to low-volume, ultra-luxury, high-yield eco-lodges.
That is a brilliant strategy for conservation, honestly. The government is essentially using the environment as a structural filter for high-net-worth tourism.
Exactly. When a government actively filters for high-spend tourism, they push the entire infrastructure development toward the ultra-luxury sector. So, for you, the listener, this means something very urgent.
The clock is ticking.
It is. The window of opportunity to visit this country on a normal, real-person budget is rapidly closing. The eco-resort investments are laying the groundwork for a massive price surge.
So, get there now. And there's another huge draw here beyond the pristine biodiversity. It's the chocolate. I mean, they don't call it the chocolate island of Africa for nothing.
The cacao production here is just legendary. Due to the rich volcanic soil and the specific microclimates of the islands, they produce some of the most acclaimed single-origin cacao in the world.
Specifically, the Claudio Corello varieties grown over on Principe.
Mm.
The agronomy behind it is fascinating. It's a deeply labor-intensive fermentation and roasting process that yields this incredibly pure, bitter, rich chocolate.
It's an art form.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this narrative is catching fire in global food travel media. It adds this rich culinary layer to the destination that most standard African safari trips just don't have. But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If the chocolate is world-class, the beaches are pristine, and the entire country is a protected biosphere.
Why is it so incredibly hard to actually get there?
Well, because geographical isolation comes with an astronomical logistical cost. And this is where we really have to discuss the single biggest hurdle of the entire endeavor.
Flight economics.
Yeah. You have to remember that commercial aviation relies entirely on scale and volume to drive down prices.
Right.
São Tomé Príncipe does not have volume.
No, 30,000 people a year is not volume. Let me just lay out the financial reality of getting your foot in the door here. If you're listening in Sydney, Australia, flights to this tiny nation will cost you anywhere between $2,300 and $3,500 round trip.
It's a huge investment. And from New York, you are looking at a $7,749 minimum. From Toronto and Melbourne, it's roughly $2,000 to $2,800. The numbers are genuinely staggering.
And you have to understand the mechanisms driving those prices. Your $3,000 airline ticket is not going into the local microeconomy to build roads or hospitals.
Right. It's not a local tax.
No, it is going to the international airline to cover the immense route complexity. Flying into an isolated equatorial airstrip means the airline has to factor in complex refueling logistics, really high landing fees for a low-traffic airport, and the simple fact that they cannot guarantee a full cabin of 300 passengers to subsidize the fuel burn.
The only anomaly in this entire global flight matrix seems to be London. If you fly from London during off-peak times, you can grab a flight for about $800 round trip. Why is London the magic loophole here?
It comes back to the colonial history, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the historical ties between the UK, Portugal, and the former colonies mean that TAP Air Portugal operates somewhat regular subsidized routes out of Lisbon. So if you can catch a cheap connection from London to Lisbon, you can ride that historical routing down to the Gulf of Guinea.
Wow, okay.
But even that loophole has a catch because it is entirely dependent on the seasons. If you wait until August, that exact same London flight rockets up to $1,735.
Which means you absolutely cannot separate the cost of your flights from the local weather patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get into this because it's not just a simple matter of packing a light sweater for the winter What is the actual meteorological reality on the ground?
It is intense. There are two distinct dry seasons and two distinct wet seasons.
Okay.
They're largely driven by the movement of the Intertropical Convergence Zone, which is this massive belt of low pressure that circles the Earth near the equator. The main dry season runs from June to September.
So that's the best time to go.
That is your absolute best window. The dirt roads in the interior are firm, which is critical for 4x4 tours. If you are heading to Príncipe for diving, this is when the ocean currents settle and the water visibility is prime.
Nice.
There is also a shorter secondary dry season from December to February.
But when we talk about the wet seasons, I mean, the research uses the word brutal. What does wet actually mean here? Are we talking about a refreshing afternoon shower?
Not even close.
Oh, boy.
The rainy seasons are March to May, and then again from October to November. And just to give you an idea of the sheer volume of water, the southern part of São Tomé Island receives over 7,000 millimeters of rain annually.
Wait, 7,000 millimeters?
Yeah.
That is an incomprehensible amount of water. Like, I literally can't picture that.
It is transformative. When it rains like that, the interior dirt trails don't just get muddy, they become entirely impassable rivers of clay.
Oh, wow.
Even a heavy-duty 4x4 will get hopelessly stuck. So if you visit during these months, you are severely physically limited in what you can actually see and do.
So there's this massive logistical trade-off you have to make. If you go in July or August, you get that glorious, stable, dry weather. But you get hit with peak flight prices and hotel rates that are 20 to 30% higher.
Exactly.
On the other hand, there seems to be a slight sweet spot in May or June. You catch the very edge of the dry weather, but you might still snag a flight from Europe for under $1,000.
And the timing dictates more than just your budget. It dictates your basic mobility. Because of those low visitor numbers, the 30,000 a year we talked about, the supply of absolutely everything is incredibly finite.
Which, I mean, sounds ideal on the surface. No crowds means you aren't fighting for space on the sand, and you aren't dealing with touts trying to sell you mass-produced souvenirs every 5 minutes.
It is deeply peaceful, yeah. But it also means there is zero surplus infrastructure. A country with 30,000 visitors cannot financially justify maintaining a massive fleet of idle rental cars or building thousands of empty hotel rooms just in case there is a sudden influx.
All right, that makes sense.
So the few good hotel rooms and the handful of reliable rental cars sell out months in advance during that dry season peak.
So to summarize the entry phase for you, you are paying a massive premium just for the geographical right to land on the airstrip, and you have to thread the needle between 7,000 millimeters of rain and sold-out infrastructure.
That's the reality.
Let's talk about what happens when you actually touch down. Paint the picture of the arrival experience for us, because this is where that incredible digital versus physical clash we talked about in the intro really happens.
Okay, so you land at São Tomé International Airport. It's a small, deeply functional, single-terminal building.
Like how small?
Very small. You should not expect a sprawling, multi-story, duty-free mall with luxury lounges. It is an exercise in profound patience. The visa on arrival process is straightforward for most Western passports, but it is entirely manual.
So lots of paperwork.
Yeah. Expect to stand in the heat for 30 to 60 minutes just to get through the initial arrival processing.
And before you even get to the luggage carousel, you hit the ultimate bureaucratic wall. Let's talk about the yellow fever trap.
This cannot be overstated. You absolutely must have proof of your yellow fever vaccination to enter the country. There are no exceptions, and international monitoring bodies like the World Health Organization mandate these checks for equatorial nations with fragile local healthcare systems.
But the trap isn't that people forget to get the vaccine, right? Most travelers heading to Central Africa know to visit a travel clinic.
Right.
The trap is the required format. You must have the physical yellow cardboard booklet, the International Certificate of Vaccination or Prophylaxis.
This is exactly what we were discussing earlier. You have to understand that São Tomé operates on a localized, paper-based administrative system. They do not have the massive server infrastructure or the perfectly stable power grids required to run continuous, high-speed digital scanning terminals.
So my Apple Wallet is useless.
Completely useless. A digital health record from an app based in London or a PDF letter from your local doctor in Sydney means absolutely nothing to a border official whose strict, legally binding mandate is to check for the physical WHO-sanctioned yellow booklet.
Wow.
If you present a digital screenshot, you will be held at the airport. It is a fundamental clash between the frictionless digital expectations of the modern traveler and the sovereign physical reality of the country.
It is a profound lesson in leaving your assumptions at the departure gate.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you survive the yellow paper test, you grab your bags, and you step out of the airport. What is the immediate vibe?
It's remarkably peaceful, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are no Ubers. There are no ride-sharing apps. Taxis to the capital town, which is also simply called São Tomé, cost about $5 to $10. You must negotiate directly with the driver or take a shared collective taxi where you ride with locals making multiple stops.
Kind of like a minibus situation.
Exactly. But once you are in the town, you are surrounded by these fading yellow Portuguese colonial buildings. There is a beautiful waterfront esplanade, a very relaxed pace of life, and the iconic Yellow Sé Cathedral just minutes from the port.
But before you can really sink into that relaxed pace, you have to secure your transport to see the rest of the island. And this introduces us to perhaps the most frustrating logistical hurdle of the entire trip. We call it the 4x4 phantom booking.
Oh, this is where travelers really get caught out by the microeconomy.
Let's look at the raw numbers here. To leave the capital and see the interior rainforests or complete the coastal circuits, a 4x4 vehicle is strictly required. A standard sedan will not survive the dirt tracks.
Absolutely not.
Now, the daily rental rates are surprisingly reasonable, about $60 to $80 a day. But here is the massive catch. The entire country only has roughly 20 to 30 rental vehicles combined across all local operators.
Just let that sink in. 20 to 30 cars.
And you have to ask yourself why that is. I mean, why wouldn't an enterprising local business owner just buy 100 more cars to meet the July demand?
Well, it comes down to the macroeconomics of island vehicle importation. Bringing a heavy-duty 4x4 into São Tomé involves astronomical shipping costs and massive import tariffs.
Love the maintenance, right?
Exactly. There is no robust local supply chain for spare parts. If an alternator breaks or a suspension strut snaps on one of those jungle roads, the mechanic can't just order a part for a next-day delivery on Amazon.
Right.
It might take 3 months for that part to arrive on a cargo ship from Lisbon.
So maintaining a massive fleet is essentially financial suicide for a local business.
Precisely. They maintain exactly the number of cars they can afford to keep running year-round, which means in July and August, those 20 or 30 cars just evaporate.
And here is the phantom part of the trap. People arrive, assuming they can just walk up to a counter like they would at a massive airport in Florida, and there is literally nothing left.
Nothing.
Even worse, some third-party booking websites will allow you to click reserve and take your money, but without localized written confirmation directly from your hotel or a trusted local operator, that car does not exist.
It's a phantom booking.
Yeah. And if you don't secure your car the exact same week you book your flight, you will be forced to pivot to guided tours. And the financial penalty for that is steep. You will pay $150 to $250 a day just to see the exact same waterfalls and plantations you could have driven to yourself for a fraction of the cost.
It perfectly illustrates why meticulous planning is your only defense against the island's economic reality.
Which brings us to another massive psychological trap. The country is called São Tomé Príncipe.
Yes.
The ampersand connects them in our minds, you know? It sounds like a natural pair. If I
Uh.
travel there, I naturally assume I can just bounce between the two islands.
The Príncipe illusion. It is a fascinating psychological expectation. Because they share a national title, travelers assume they're equally accessible, perhaps connected by a cheap, frequent, hourly ferry service.
Right. Thinking you can just hop over to Príncipe on a whim is like assuming you can take a cheap city bus between London and Paris just because they're in the same time zone. The geography completely forbids it.
It absolutely does. You have to look at the oceanography. The Gulf of Guinea has deep oceanic trenches and powerful, unpredictable currents.
So no casual boat rides.
Right. Operating a reliable, high-speed tourist ferry across that stretch of open ocean is incredibly difficult and dangerous, which is why a casual boat trip isn't an option. Príncipe is not a day trip. The reality is that to get there, you must take an STP Airways inter-island flight.
And what are the logistics of that flight? I mean, what are we flying on?
You are flying on small twin propeller planes, often twin otters.
Okay, very small.
Very. The flight costs about $132 one way, or anywhere between $214 and $346 round trip. It only operates 6 days a week. There are absolutely no Sunday flights.
Good to know.
Because the planes are so small, the seats sell out incredibly fast during the dry season. And critically, because they operate strictly on visual flight rules or basic instrument tracking, flights are routinely canceled if a heavy tropical storm rolls in.
And let's say you do manage to snag a seat on a whim. You survive the flight, you land on Príncipe. What is the accommodation landscape like?
You will be in for a severe financial shock.
Oh.
Yeah, because Principe has almost zero budget accommodation. Referring back to that UNESCO strategy we discussed earlier, Principe has been entirely designated and developed for the ultra-luxury, low-footprint tier.
So no hostels.
Exactly. If you land there without a booking, you might find yourself wandering an island with nowhere to sleep that costs less than $400 a night.
Wow.
The only fix is to treat Principe as a completely separate, heavily fortified mini-trip within your overall vacation. You have to book it at least 6 weeks in advance, secure the inter-island flights simultaneously, and allocate a strict minimum of 3 nights to account for potential weather delays.
It sounds like an absolute expedition. But let's assume you've conquered the flights, you have your physical yellow booklet, your 4x4 is secured, and you know exactly which island you are on.
Yeah.
Where are you actually sleeping? And more importantly, what are you eating?
This is where the profound charm of the destination really shines, provided you know exactly what you are buying into. The accommodation landscape is basically divided into 4 distinct tiers.
Let's start at the entry level.
Yeah.
The budget tier, known locally as Casas de Hospedes. These are essentially family-run guest houses running between $30 and $60 a night.
Right.
We're talking about places like Pension Turismo or Residencial Avenida right in the capital. They offer a genuinely warm, authentic window into local life, but you need to heavily manage your Western expectations.
Absolutely. You will need a working grasp of Portuguese to communicate.
Nah.
There is rarely air conditioning, which is a major factor in 77-degree equatorial humidity.
Yeah, it's rough.
And the hot water is often temperamental. And again, we look at the why. The hot water isn't broken because of neglect. It is inconsistent because the island's central power grid experiences frequent fluctuations. Massive industrial water heaters just draw too much current.
So it's an infrastructure issue, not bad service.
Exactly. It is a basic, authentic tier that serves the true, resilient backpacker well.
Moving up, we have the mid-range tier, sitting around $90 to $150 a night. Here you start seeing AC, swimming pools, and somewhat reliable Wi-Fi.
Which is nice.
Yeah. Properties like the Hotel Miramar by Sana and the Pestana São Tomé are the mainstays here. The Pestana is essentially the closest thing you will find to a standard, predictable, branded hotel experience on the main island.
But the third tier is where the true, unique identity of the country really lies. The Rosas.
Yes, the plantation stays. This sounds absolutely incredible to me. Tell us about the Rosas.
These are the remnants of the historic cacao and coffee plantations. During the height of the colonial era, these were massive, self-sustaining agricultural cities.
Wow.
Today, places like Rosabella Monte and Rosamonte Forte have been partially reclaimed from the jungle and converted into eco-lodges.
Okay, I love that. What does it cost?
You're paying between $120 and $200 a night. You sleep in this fading colonial-era architecture, you eat meals prepared entirely from local plantation produce, and you take guided walks right through the ancient cacao trees.
That sounds magical.
It's an immersive, almost haunting atmosphere that you simply cannot replicate anywhere else in Africa.
It sounds like the absolute perfect mid-range splurge. It really combines history, nature, and comfort. But then there's the fourth tier, the luxury tier. And this is predominantly over on Principe, right?
Yes. The flagship example is the Bom Bom Island Resort, where you are looking at $350 to well over $600 a night. This is ultra-premium, incredibly remote eco-luxury designed specifically for that high-yield demographic the government is targeting.
Okay, so you've got a bed, whether it's a family guest house or a luxury eco-lodge. Now you need to eat. The food culture here is this fascinating mix of heavy Portuguese influence and deep West African roots.
That's a great culinary scene.
Yeah, you're looking at an abundance of fresh grilled fish, fried banana chips, and a staple dish called kalulu, which is this incredibly complex, slow-cooked fish and leafy green stew.
And of course, the cacao. It is omnipresent. You'll find it in raw nibs at the market, integrated into savory sauces, and as world-class finished chocolate bars.
Let's break down the actual costs of sustaining yourself here. A standard local restaurant will run you $8 to $15 for a solid meal. A more formal 3-course meal at a mid-range establishment is about $55.
Not bad at all.
And the street food ecosystem here is incredibly safe. You can confidently buy freshly grilled fish and plantains at the capital's established market stalls for just $2 to $5.
That's a steal.
Right. And if you decide to self-cater and visit local supermarkets like Supercontinente or Almaviva, the pricing is really fascinating. Local goods are incredibly cheap. A liter of bottled water is 60 to 80 cents. Local tomatoes are $1.50 a kilo, and a bag of those famous cacao nibs is just $4 to $6. But the moment you look at imported goods,
Oh, the prices skyrocket. Anything that has to arrive on a cargo ship, like packaged snacks, imported cheeses, foreign alcohols, will cost 2 to 3 times what you would pay in a UK supermarket.
that makes sense, given the logistics.
And practically speaking, you must always pay in the local currency, the dobra. The conversion mechanics are relatively straightforward. Roughly 1,000 dobra equals 90 cents US, but hard currency really rules the local markets.
But here's a massive caveat that anyone visiting needs to hear. It is what we call an honest disappointment, and it revolves around restaurant reliability.
Yeah, this is a big one.
You might arrive at a restaurant during its listed opening hours and find it completely padlocked. Or you sit down, look at a beautifully printed menu, and the waiter informs you that 2/3 of the items are simply unavailable.
And again, to a Western traveler, this feels like a failure of management or just terrible customer service. But you have to look at the mechanics of the micro-island food chain.
What's really happening?
While these restaurants do not have access to massive industrial refrigeration facilities, nor do they rely on massive commercial trawler fleets. They rely entirely on local artisanal fishermen heading out into the Gulf of Guinea in small, traditional dugout canoes.
So if the weather turns bad,
If the seas are rough or a storm rolls in, those small canoes do not go out. If the fishermen don't go out, there is no protein delivered to the docks.
oh wow.
Yeah. If there is no protein at the docks, the restaurant simply has nothing to cook. Period. The supply chain is incredibly fragile and deeply tied to the immediate natural environment.
I have to play devil's advocate here again. If I'm spending $150 a night at a boutique hotel or $55 for a dinner reservation, shouldn't I expect a guaranteed meal? Why shouldn't I be annoyed when the kitchen tells me they're out of food? I mean, I'm paying a premium.
Your annoyance is entirely understandable based on Western economic conditioning, where we naturally equate a high price tag with a guaranteed, unbroken supply chain.
Right.
But in São Tomé, you aren't paying $150 for the guarantee of a massive walk-in freezer stocked with imported steaks. You are paying $150 for the privilege of existing in an incredibly remote, ecologically fragile place.
That's a good point.
You have to fundamentally decouple the concept of price from predictable abundance. Your mindset has to shift from passive consumption to active adaptation.
So roll with the punches.
Exactly. The seasoned travelers here always have a backup plan. Some local fruit, fresh bread, and cacao nibs from the market waiting in their room just in case.
That is a fascinating way to frame it. You are buying isolation, not a 247-room service menu. Okay, so we've covered the flights, the cars, the food, and the hotels. Let's contextualize all of these numbers.
Let's do it.
If someone is listening to this trying to figure out if they can actually swing this trip on their specific salary, what does the financial landscape actually look like once you step outside the capital? Let's break down the daily out-of-pocket reality for different traveler profiles.
Starting with the highly resourceful, low-budget backpacker, you are looking at $31 and $85 per day.
That's pretty low.
It is, but that requires intense effort. You must rely exclusively on those crowded collective taxis, eat entirely from the street food stalls, or cook your own local market produce. And critically, you must speak enough Portuguese to negotiate and self-organize your hikes without paying for a formal guide.
Gotcha.
It is a rough, unpolished way to travel, but it is deeply authentic.
Moving up to the mid-range traveler. This seems to be the absolute sweet spot. We're looking at $100 to $180 per day per person.
Yeah, that's a great range.
That budget allows you to cover your stay at historic Rosa, split the cost of that crucial $80 a day 4x4 rental, eat out for lunch and dinner, and still have room for a paid activity, like a specialized $25 chocolate plantation tour. If you budget around $120 to $150 a day, you are in a very comfortable, highly mobile position.
Now let's look at a family budget, assuming 2 adults and 2 children.
Always a pricey one.
Always. You are looking at $280 to $380 a day collectively. That breaks down to roughly $130 to $160 for a family-sized room or 2 mid-range rooms, $80 to $100 for local meals, and $70 to $80 for the 4x4. So 10 days on the ground is going to cost you about $3,000 to $3,800 out of pocket.
But here's the massive reality check. When you add in those complex, expensive flights for 4 people, the total trip cost easily explodes to $8,000 to $11,000. And I have to ask, if I am spending $11,000 for my family, dealing with phantom rental cars, 7,000 millimeters of rain, and restaurant menus that run out of fish, why am I not just taking my family to the Maldives or the Caribbean where everything just works perfectly?
Because the Maldives offers a commodified, engineered luxury. It is a beautiful but heavily manicured experience.
Sure.
São Tomé offers an untamed frontier. You are paying for the profound educational experience of showing your family a living, breathing biosphere, ancient rainforests, and a culture completely untouched by mass commercialization.
Okay, I see that.
It requires a family with a high tolerance for improvisation, but the reward is a genuine adventure rather than just a vacation.
That is a very compelling defense. And of course, at the very top end, we have the luxury tier, running $250 to over $600 a day. This is the Bomb Island experience, chartering private speedboats to hidden beaches and staying in premium restored Rosa suites.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's one more profile we need to discuss, the digital nomad.
This is a crucial warning. If you want to rent a local apartment for a month, it will cost you about $283 to $414. A local SIM card for internet is about $100. So physically, you can live there for $1,800 to $2,800 a month.
Which sounds amazing for remote work.
It sounds amazing until you look at the digital infrastructure, which is practically non-existent. There are no trendy co-working spaces with ergonomic chairs. More importantly, the island is not connected to the massive high-speed undersea fiber optic cables that power the internet in major global hubs. The connection is slow, satellite-dependent, and prone to dropouts during weather events.
I love the analogy we came across for this in the research. Trying to be a fast-paced, high-output digital nomad in São Tomé is like trying to run high-speed software on a beautiful vintage typewriter.
That's so accurate.
It's gorgeous to look at. It makes for an incredible photo on your social media, but the mechanical reality of it is going to frustrate you to absolutely no end if you were trying to execute quick, modern tasks.
Exactly. The consensus is that a 1-month stay would be a deeply transformative meditative experience. You would disconnect and reset.
Right.
But a 6-month stay, trying to hit constant Zoom deadlines without reliable fast internet while navigating a fragile food supply chain, it would quickly become maddening.
So with all the financial and logistical realities firmly established, let's talk about the actual payoff. Is it safe to wander around these islands? And what are the absolute highlights that make navigating all this bureaucracy worth it?
The safety profile of São Tomé and Príncipe is remarkably fundamentally strong. By every relevant metric, it is extremely safe.
That's great to hear.
There is a very low incidence of violent crime, absolutely zero political violence directed at tourists, and there are no blanket travel warnings from major international monitoring bodies like the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office.
They specifically note that the country is highly safe for solo female travelers and families. The biggest risks are actually environmental. The year-round 25 degrees Celsius heat, which is about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, combined with that intense equatorial humidity, can pose a real physical risk of heat stroke or dehydration, especially if you are out hiking in the rainforests.
You really have to stay hydrated.
Yes. Also, malaria is present on the islands, so taking medical prophylaxis and carrying travel insurance with medical evacuation coverage is strictly mandatory. But as far as human threats, almost nothing.
And if we look at why the safety profile is so strong, it connects directly back to that UNESCO tourism strategy and the low visitor numbers.
How so?
Because mass tourism hasn't arrived, the parasitic ecosystem of petty crime that typically targets tourists, the organized pickpockets, the coordinated distraction scams, simply hasn't had the sheer volume of targets needed to develop.
Ah, right. It's a numbers game.
Furthermore, the local communities are deeply tight-knit. Everyone knows everyone, which naturally suppresses crime.
There is only one minor scam to be aware of. Right in the capital near Fort San Sebastian.
Oh, right, the guides.
Yeah. Unofficial guides might start walking with you, pointing out historical facts, and then aggressively demand payment at the end of the tour. The solution is simple. Either agree on a firm price before you start walking, or deliver a firm, polite, no thank you immediately.
Exactly. So it is pristine in more ways than one. Let's talk about the absolute highlights, the moments that justify the $3,000 flight and the Phantom 4x4s.
Let's hear it.
Number 1 is Praia Banana on Príncipe.
Praia Banana. It is consistently listed among the most stunning, untouched beaches in all of Africa. A perfect crescent of white sand backed by dense jungle.
It's unbelievable.
And the incredible thing is, once you have survived the financial shock of getting to Príncipe, accessing the beach itself costs almost nothing, just a $10 local taxi from the tiny airport. You essentially get a world-class, billionaire-tier beach entirely to yourself.
But the window is closing.
Right. This level of exclusivity will not survive the next 5 years of luxury development.
Highlight number 2 we've touched on, the Rosa dusk.
Oh, yeah.
Spending the evening at a 19th century cacao plantation like Rosa Monte, sitting on a decaying colonial veranda, listening to the absolute roar of the jungle insects, smelling the roasting cacao, and knowing you are completely disconnected from the frantic pace of the modern world.
And highlight number 3 is a visual marvel, Cone Grande. This is a 663-meter volcanic plug, a literal tower of solidified magma that just shoots straight up out of the dense jungle canopy in the south of the island.
It's massive.
You access the viewpoints via a $60, $80 Southern Circuit tour. It looks like a matte painting straight out of a fantasy movie. It just defies logic.
But, to keep things balanced, we must address the other major honest disappointment alongside the restaurant supply chains.
And what's that?
That is independent mobility on Principe.
Right. If you travel to Principe without that massive luxury budget, moving between these incredible sites is incredibly difficult. Say you want to see Praia Campina in the morning and Praia Banana in the afternoon. There is no public transit network catering to tourists.
Nope.
There are no cheap scooter rentals on every corner. You are entirely reliant on expensive ad hoc taxi arrangements or hoping to hitch a ride with a local. The infrastructure of the island is designed right now for one specific price tier, high.
So if this intense combination of profound isolation, logistical traps, and high costs is sounding a bit too complex, it is worth looking at the two alternative destinations often compared to São Tomé.
Okay, the first alternative is the Comoros Islands, located on the other side of the continent in the Indian Ocean. Comoros shares that similar hidden volcanic Africa vibe.
True.
It is slightly cheaper on the ground, maybe $60 to $90 a day for a mid-range traveler. But the flights from hubs like London are even worse, $1,800 to $2,500 with grueling multi-day connections. And the political stability and safety profile are nowhere near as pristine as São Tomé.
The second alternative is much closer to home for Western travelers, particularly Europeans. San Miguel in the Azores.
The Azores. These are also volcanic islands, also featuring UNESCO-listed sites, but they are dramatically easier to navigate. Because they are an autonomous region of Portugal, they benefit from heavy European Union infrastructure subsidies.
Everything just works.
Yeah, flights from London are incredibly cheap, often just $180 to $350. Daily budgets are a manageable $80 to $130. The roads are perfectly paved, and the internet works flawlessly.
It's completely different.
So I have to ask, if the Azores gives you safe, beautiful volcanic islands, incredible seafood, and European connections for a fraction of the price and zero logistical stress, why would anyone choose São Tomé?
Well, because the Azores, as undeniably beautiful and convenient as they are, do not give you the dense equatorial African rainforests.
Right.
They do not give you the deep, complex history of the single-origin chocolate plantations. And most importantly, they do not give you that genuine Praia Banana moment, that profound, almost overwhelming feeling of absolute, untamed remoteness.
It's a different kind of trip entirely.
Exactly. You are choosing São Tomé specifically because you want to be challenged. You want to see a living frontier before it is paved, packaged, and tamed by global tourism.
And that leads us perfectly to the final verdicts. Having weighed the astronomical flight costs, the 7,000 millimeters of rain, the physical yellow fever cards, the phantom rental cars, and the absolute breathtaking highlights, who is this actually for? Let's rapidly fire through the verdicts based on traveler personas. Up first, the backpacker.
So the verdict is a conditional yes. This is only for the highly resourceful, deeply resilient backpacker. Realistically, you need to budget at least $60 a day to function safely. If you are looking for a cheap, easy, Southeast Asia-style backpacker scene with $10 dorms, fast Wi-Fi, and tour desks on every corner, do not come here. It simply does not exist.
A mid-range traveler.
A strong ship. In fact, this is the optimal window. The years 2026 and 2027 are the exact right time to go. You are early enough to beat the massive eco-resort investments that will inevitably surge prices and restrict access by 2028. This is the sweet spot.
The family.
A qualified, yes. It is a massive financial investment, $8,000 to $11,000 total, and it requires a family with a very high tolerance for improvisation and sudden changes to the itinerary. There is no all-inclusive predictability here. But if your family can handle Plan B gracefully, it is an incredibly safe, highly educational, and deeply unique environment.
The luxury traveler.
Yes, absolutely, but you must still book months in advance due to the low supply. Properties like Bomb Bomb are expensive, but they offer true absolute isolation compared to popular luxury hubs like the Maldives or the Seychelles, which are actually 30 to 50% more expensive for a similar quality of beach, but with 10 times the crowds.
And finally, the digital nomad or solo long-term traveler.
Yes, for a 1-month stay, to disconnect and explore, absolutely. No, for a long-term functional base. It is a transformative environment for a few weeks, but the fragile supply chain and the lack of fiber optic internet will eventually break your modern workflow.
So basically, if you have a mid-range budget and you're willing to do the rigorous homework booking the 4x4 early, understanding the flight seasons, getting the physical yellow fever card, and treating it as a completely separate logistical mission, you were essentially buying a time machine.
Exactly.
You are paying to see a pristine island ecosystem before the rest of the world inevitably changes it.
That is precisely what you are buying. This is a destination that deeply rewards high planning and high mental flexibility, but it heavily, sometimes ruthlessly, penalizes anyone making assumptions based on standardized Western travel norms.
Wow. Okay, let's recap the incredible journey we've mapped out today. We have looked at the profound highs of São Tomé and Príncipe, sleeping in beautifully decaying 19th century cacao plantations, standing on pristine white sand beaches with absolutely no one else in sight, marveling at the towering geology of the Con Grande, and experiencing an environment that is remarkably, fundamentally safe from crime.
But we've also navigated the deep, complex logistical lows required to earn those highs.
Right. The evaporation of the 4x4 rental fleet, the massive expense and complexity of just flying into the Gulf of Guinea, the restaurant roulette where your dinner is entirely dependent on a local fisherman's canoe, and the absolute unbending necessity of that physical, yellow cardboard booklet. It is a place of beautiful extremes.
Which really leaves us with a critical, somewhat uncomfortable tension regarding the future of global travel.
Let's hear it.
When a nation boldly protects its entire sovereign territory as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, it makes a profound promise to the planet to preserve its biodiversity. But as these ultra-luxury eco-resorts move in to financially support that promise, we have to ask a difficult question.
What's the question?
At what point does protecting an island effectively mean pricing the average curious traveler entirely out of ever experiencing it? Are we truly saving these fragile places for humanity, or are we just quietly gatekeeping them for the ultra-wealthy?
That is an incredibly fascinating question, and something to deeply mull over the next time you see an advertisement for a pristine, untouched eco-resort. Thank you for joining us on this advanced scouting report. Remember to keep seeking out the facts behind the destinations, always look past the glossy brochures, and keep questioning your own travel assumptions. If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.